My grandmother stood up at my cousin's wedding rehearsal dinner and said, "Before we toast the happy couple, there's something this family needs to hear." I thought she was going to give a speech about love. I had no idea she was about to blow up 32 years of lies in front of 60 people holding champagne flutes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where everything actually started. Not at that dinner, but in the kitchen of the house I grew up in, where I first understood that I was somehow the wrong kind of daughter. My name is Vivienne. I'm 31 now. I grew up in Naperville, Illinois, in one of those neighborhoods where every house has a two-car garage and a basketball hoop in the driveway and a perfectly maintained lawn that nobody actually plays on. My family fit right in from the outside. My father, I'll call him Dad because that's what I called him for most of my life, worked in corporate insurance. My mother was a dental hygienist. My older brother Theo was the kind of kid who got straight A's without seeming to try. And then there was me. I was the one who didn't fit the photo, not in an obvious way, not at first. But there were signs, and looking back now, they were everywhere. Theo got the big birthday parties, the ones with rented bounce houses and 20 kids from school. Mine were quiet, family only, and usually combined with some other event, so they didn't take up a whole weekend. Theo's baseball games, my parents were there every Saturday, rain or shine, lawn chairs and all. My track meets, my mother showed up maybe half the time, and my father maybe once or twice a season. I told myself I was being oversensitive. I told myself this for 28 years. The person who never let me believe that lie, not completely, was my grandmother. My dad's mother, everyone called her Grandma Bette, but her full name was Bettina, and she carried that name like it meant something. She was 79 years old, 5 feet tall, and had the kind of quiet authority that made restaurant servers stand up straight when she walked in. She lived alone in a house in Wheaton, about 20 minutes from us, and from the time I was small I would spend weekends there. Just me. Theo never came. I don't know if he was never invited or just never wanted to go, but Grandma Bette and I had a thing. Saturday morning pancakes, afternoon walks, and long conversations on her back porch that I understood, even as a child, were different from conversations anyone else had with me. She listened like what I said mattered. When I was about 9, I asked her why Mom and Dad seemed so much happier when I wasn't in the room. I remember being embarrassed the second I said it. Kids aren't supposed to notice things like that. Or at least they're not supposed to say them out loud. Grandma Bette didn't tell me I was imagining things. She didn't laugh it off or pivot to something else. She set down her coffee cup, looked at me for a long moment and said, "You are one of the most perceptive people I have ever known, Vivienne. Don't let anyone take that from you." She didn't answer the question. I noticed that too. I graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in nursing. I did it mostly on loans and a partial scholarship because my parents paid for Theo's college. Full tuition, room and board, a used car. And when it was my turn, they sat me down and explained that money was tight. Theo was in his second year of a business program at DePaul at the time. I did the math. The math did not add up. But I said, okay, I understood, and I went and figured it out myself. I moved to Indianapolis for work after graduation. Good hospital system, lower cost of living, and honestly, the distance felt like something I needed without being able to name why. I came home for holidays. I sat at the table. I watched my parents' faces light up differently when Theo walked into the room. I ate my mother's green bean casserole and told myself it was fine. I was 28 when Theo got engaged. His fiancée, I'll call her Joanna, was perfectly nice. Genuinely. She was warm and funny and made an effort with me in a way that I appreciated more than I probably showed. The engagement party was at my parents' house. My mother spent 3 weeks planning it. The house was decorated. There was catered food. My mother cried when Theo made his toast. Good tears, happy tears, the kind I had never seen her cry at anything involving me. I went home to Indianapolis that night and sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes before I could go upstairs. I don't say this looking for pity. I say it because I need you to understand the 30 years of accumulation that had happened before that rehearsal dinner. 30 years of small exclusions, small silences, small moments when I was the one who didn't quite belong. By the time I was 28, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just quietly certain that I was less loved, less important, less theirs. Grandma Bette called me the morning after the engagement party. She didn't ask how it went. She just said, "Are you all right?" And something about the way she asked, like she already knew the answer and was really asking if I was surviving it, made me start crying in a way I hadn't let myself in years. "I'm going to take care of you," she said. "I need you to trust me." I didn't know what that meant. I said okay. The rehearsal dinner was at a private room in a restaurant in downtown Chicago. 60 people, both families, close friends, the wedding party. I was not a bridesmaid, which, fine. Theo hadn't asked me to be a groomsman equivalent, hadn't given me any role in the wedding at all. I was a guest. I wore a green dress I'd bought on sale and sat at a table near the back with some of Joanna's cousins who were very kind to me and had no idea anything was wrong. Grandma Bette was there. She'd been quiet all evening. She sat at the family table, ate her salmon, spoke when spoken to. I kept glancing at her because something about her energy felt different. Not anxious, more like contained. Like someone who has decided to do a hard thing and is simply waiting for the right moment. The toasts started. Joanna's father went first, then her mother, then the best man. Then my mother stood up. She talked about Theo for 5 minutes, his accomplishments, his kindness, how proud she was, how this was the best day. She cried again. She said he had always been her greatest joy. She did not mention me. I was her only daughter sitting 30 feet away, and she gave a 5-minute speech about family and love, and did not say my name once. The table with Joanna's cousins went quiet. One of them reached over and touched my arm. I stared at my water glass. And then Grandma Bette stood up. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't tap her glass. She simply stood, and something about the way she carried herself made the room go still. "I'd like to say a few words," she said. Her voice was completely calm. "I've been part of this family for 54 years. I've watched it grow and change and keep certain secrets that I stayed quiet about for too long. Tonight, I'm going to stop staying quiet." My mother's face did something I had never seen it do. It went absolutely white. "Vivienne," Grandma Bette said, looking directly at me, "would you come stand with me?" I didn't understand what was happening. I stood up because she asked me to, because I had trusted her since I was 9 years old, and I walked to the front of the room on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. 60 people watched me do it. Grandma Bette took my hand. "My son has 2 children," she said. "He raised both of them, but for 30 years his wife has known something that changed how she treated one of them, and I have documentation tonight that I should have shared a long time ago." She reached into her purse, this small beaded evening bag that seemed impossible, and pulled out a folded envelope. I had a private paternity test done, with Vivienne's knowledge and consent, 8 months ago. She looked at my father. "You are her biological father. You have always been her biological father. Your wife knew this. She always knew this." The room was absolutely silent. "The story your wife told you, that she had an affair, that Vivienne might not be yours, that this was why things were complicated, was a lie. I hired a private investigator 18 months ago. It took time to confirm everything. The man your wife claimed was involved has confirmed in a written statement that nothing happened. She fabricated an affair to explain why she treated your daughter differently. The real reason is one I'll let her explain herself. But I will not sit at another family table and watch Vivienne be invisible while the truth exists in a folder in my filing cabinet." She set the envelope on the table in front of my father. My mother stood up. "Bette, this is not the place. You made it the place," Grandma Bette said. "Every time you let your daughter sit at a table like a guest in her own family. Sit down." My mother sat down. "I need to pause here and tell you what I was feeling, because I think people imagine a moment like that feels triumphant. It doesn't. Not immediately. What I felt standing there holding my grandmother's hand in front of 60 people was a specific kind of vertigo. Like the floor had dropped 3 inches and I was recalculating my balance. Everything I had believed about myself, the quiet certainty that I was somehow less, was being dismantled in real time. And dismantling something you built your entire interior life around doesn't feel like winning. It feels like standing in a room where all the walls just fell down. I was crying. I didn't realize it until Joanna, Theo's fiancée, the woman marrying into this family in 18 hours, walked across the room and put her arms around me. She didn't say anything, she just held on. Theo sat at the family table with his hands flat on the white tablecloth, looking at my father, who was looking at my mother, who was looking at Grandma Bette with an expression that I can only describe as someone who has been waiting for a verdict and has finally heard it. The dinner ended. People left quietly. Someone paid the bill. I don't know who. The weeks after that night were the hardest of my adult life, and also in a strange way the most terrifying. My father called me the morning after the rehearsal dinner. He drove to Indianapolis 2 days later and sat in my apartment kitchen for 3 hours. He cried in a way I had never seen him cry. He told me that my mother had told him, early in their marriage, that she'd had a brief affair and wasn't sure about a pregnancy. He had believed her. He had tried to do the right thing, stayed, kept the family together. But something in him had shifted toward me without him fully realizing it. He had kept a distance that he told himself was complicated, but that was, he admitted now, a choice. His choice. He owned that. I didn't forgive him that day. I told him I needed time. He said he understood and that he would wait as long as I needed. He's been waiting. We talk on the phone every Sunday now. It's still uncomfortable sometimes. I think it will be for a while, but he's there and he's trying, and that counts for something. My mother. I have not spoken to her since that night. That's not something I say lightly. She is my mother. She is the person who drove me to school and made me soup when I was sick, and taught me how to drive in an empty parking lot on a Sunday afternoon. Those things happened. They were real. But so was everything else. She called me 4 times in the 2 weeks after the rehearsal dinner, and I didn't answer. She left one voicemail that was mostly her crying and saying she could explain. I listened to it twice and then I didn't listen to it again. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear her explanation. I'm not there yet. Theo called me the night before his wedding. He said he didn't know. I believe him. Theo has never been a liar, and the confusion on his face at that dinner table was not performed. He said he was sorry. He said he wanted to know his sister. I told him I wanted that too, and I meant it. We had dinner last month, just the two of us in Chicago, and it was awkward and a little painful, and also the most honest conversation we'd ever had. We're figuring it out. Joanna texted me the morning after the rehearsal dinner. She said, I know this isn't about the wedding, and I'm not making it about the wedding. I just want you to know you have family here, if you want it. She signed it with her name, no qualifiers. I cried for a long time after that text, the good kind of crying, the kind that means something is opening instead of closing. Grandma Bette and I had coffee last Saturday. She made the pancakes. We sat on her back porch even though it was October and a little cold, wrapped in the blankets she keeps out there. And she told me the whole story of the 18 months before that dinner. The private investigator she hired, the paternity test she approached me about carefully, in private, making sure I was the one choosing it. The folder she kept in her filing cabinet. The decision she made methodically and without cruelty to wait until a moment when the truth could not be quietly buried again. Why the rehearsal dinner? I asked her. She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. Because your mother was going to give that toast, she said. And I knew she was going to stand up in front of 60 people and talk about family and not say your name. I'd watched it happen at every important moment of your life. I wasn't willing to watch it happen one more time. You could have told me privately, I said. You didn't have to do it in front of everyone. No, she said. I could not have. Because privately your father would have had the option to decide what to believe. Privately your mother would have had the option to manage the narrative. Privately you would have been alone with information that the people with power in that room could have turned against you. I needed witnesses. She looked at me over her coffee mug. You spent 30 years being invisible in your own family. I was not going to let the truth be invisible too. I didn't have anything to say to that. I reached across the table and held her hand, and she let me, and we sat there with the cold air coming off the backyard, and the oak tree she's had since before my father was born, dropping its leaves slowly into the grass. Here's what I know now that I didn't know a year ago. I know that being treated as less than by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally does something to the way you understand your own worth. It doesn't announce itself. It accumulates quietly like sediment, And then one day you look down and realize you've been standing on a false foundation for years. Rebuilding that, understanding that the problem was never you, was never something broken or insufficient in you, is the work of years, not a single dinner. I started therapy 4 months ago. I found a therapist in Indianapolis who specializes in family estrangement and identity. And every Tuesday evening, I drive to her office and sit in a chair that is somehow both comfortable and slightly too warm, and I say things out loud that I've been keeping in my chest since I was 9 years old. It's hard. It's also the most useful thing I've ever done. I know that the man my mother claimed was her affair partner wrote a sworn statement saying nothing happened. I don't know why she invented it. My therapist and I spend a lot of time on that question. Not to excuse what my mother did, but because understanding it matters to me. The best answer I have right now is that she wanted to stay in the marriage and needed a story that made her treatment of me make sense to my father, whether she ever intended the lie to go this far, whether she ever imagined it would shape 30 years of my life. I genuinely don't know. Maybe she'll tell me someday. I know that I am my father's biological daughter. I knew it before the test. Honestly, something about that result felt like confirmation rather than revelation. But having it confirmed in black and white, and then having Grandma Bette stand up in a room full of people and say it out loud, that mattered in a way I didn't expect. It didn't change who I am, but it changed what I was allowed to know about myself. And I know that the person who saw me, really saw me for 30 years, was a 79-year-old woman with a beaded evening bag and a folder in her filing cabinet, who understood that sometimes love means waiting patiently for the exact right moment to tell the truth where it cannot be taken back. Last week, Grandma Bette updated her will. She told me about it over the phone, matter-of-factly, the way she talks about everything. She said she divided her estate equally between my father, Theo, and me. She said she'd been meaning to do it for years, and that now there were no complications. I told her she didn't have to do that. She said, Vivienne, I know I don't have to. Pay attention to the things people choose. I've been thinking about that since. The things people choose. My mother chose a story that made her easier and me smaller. My father chose for years to believe it because not believing it was harder. And Grandma Bette chose. Every Saturday morning, every phone call, every patient year of waiting for the right moment. To make sure I knew that I was seen. I don't know what my relationship with my mother will look like in 5 years. I don't know how things with my father will settle. I know that Theo and Joanna are expecting their first baby in April, and that I am, apparently, going to be an aunt, which is a fact that still makes me smile in a slightly disbelieving way when I think about it. What I know for certain is this. For 30 years, I walked through my own family feeling like a guest who had overstayed a welcome she was never fully given. I made myself small. I ate the green bean casserole and said I was fine and drove home and sat in parking garages and told myself I was probably imagining things. I was not imagining things, and the person who made sure I would never have to pretend otherwise again is 79 years old and makes the best Saturday morning pancakes I have ever had in my life, and I am going to spend every Saturday I possibly can on that back porch with her, in the cold if I have to, for as long as she'll have me. I've thought a lot about what it actually takes for the truth to survive 30 years of suppression. It doesn't happen by accident. Someone has to choose it, actively and repeatedly, over a long stretch of time when choosing the easier thing would have cost them nothing. Grandma Bette made that choice. Not once, every single Saturday for as long as I can remember. She didn't fix everything in the moment it was broken. She didn't confront my mother at the kitchen table, or send a letter, or make ultimatums. She did something quieter and, I think, harder. She stayed present. She kept the door open. She made pancakes and asked real questions and listened, like my answers mattered. She was building something patient and durable while I was too young to understand what was being built. That's the thing I keep coming back to. Not the dinner, not the envelope, not the dramatic moment that everyone witnessed. What I keep coming back to is the 18 months of methodical, careful work she did before that night. Hiring an investigator, arranging a private paternity test, consulting a lawyer, keeping a folder in a filing cabinet, all of it done quietly, without telling me the full scope of it. Because she didn't want to raise my hopes until she was certain. She treated the truth like something worth protecting. Worth doing right. A mother made different choices. I don't say that with the kind of clean hatred that would be easier to carry. I say it because I've spent enough time in my therapist's office to understand that the choices people make when they're afraid of being caught usually end up costing them more than the truth would have. Whatever my mother was protecting when she invented that story, her marriage, her image, some version of herself she needed to believe in, it consumed 30 years and a daughter, and in the end she lost both anyway. That's not a punishment anyone handed down. That's just what happens when you build a life on a foundation that isn't true. Eventually, the weight of it becomes too much. I spent a long time believing that the way my family treated me said something definitive about my worth. That's what prolonged exclusion does. It doesn't just hurt you in the moment, it teaches you to internalize the verdict. I was quiet about my needs. I undersold myself. I accepted less than I deserved in ways that went far beyond my family. Because somewhere underneath everything, I had absorbed the lesson that I was the kind of person who got less. Unlearning that is slow. It is genuinely slow, and there are still days when I catch myself shrinking unnecessarily and have to consciously choose not to. But here is what I know. I made it through 30 years of that with my ability to love people still intact. I made it through and I'm in therapy, and I'm building something real with my brother, and I'm going to be an aunt in April. I made it through because Grandma Bette made sure I always had one place where I was fully seen, and one person is enough. One person who truly sees you is enough to keep you from disappearing entirely into someone else's lie. The envelope she pulled out of that beaded bag didn't just contain a paternity result. It contained 30 years of her paying attention. And I think that's what I want to carry forward. Not the anger, not the loss, but the understanding that showing up consistently for someone, choosing them quietly and without fanfare over a long period of time, is one of the most powerful things one human being can do for another. I'm trying to be that for the people in my life now. I'm not always good at it. But I'm trying.